Hi, welcome to the show, C2C World TV. I'm Yvonne Jones, your host for the show, and our sponsor for today's show is Edible Home Gardens Resorts. And this is specially designed for 70 million people who are living and struggling in RVs, trying to survive in the United States on a limited budget. So Edible Home Gardens is a ranch and RV resort especially designed for them. And we have a special guest today, and I'm very excited to introduce you the show with our host, and it is I'm going to blank out here with the name all of a sudden. I don't know why I do that. I'm sorry, Peter. I do that a lot sometimes, but Peter,
I understand. Peter
Peter,
Kalven,
Peter Kalven, thank you so much for joining the show.
my
And
pleasure.
you come with a very intense background of
Yeah,
lifelong stuff, what you work on. You have 40 years experience in film and entertainment, that industry alone, let alone you have a background in 20 years of business, commercial, real estate. And now
mhm,
you're on a new venture, 10 years right now, working on private funding for charitable work, correct? That's
right.
outside.
Yes,
Yeah. And
yeah,
the company that you represent is Kayonza Global Network.
correct.
And feel free to jump in and tell us a little bit about your background and what you do and what your interests are.
Okay, I'd be happy to. First of all, I have to applaud what you're doing with the edible home gardens concept and resort from a real estate investment perspective. That's a very impressive income generating concept. You and I talked about that a little bit, and I have a couple of people for you to talk to when all is said and done. For your audience, my name is Peter Kalven. I'm originally from Chicago. I now live in the second largest city in the world this far north. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So if you're a hockey fan, you know about the Oilers. And I've been here. I came here originally for 1 year. I've been here since 1978. So my long-term planning is a little iffy, but I've been focused on a variety of things. I have a degree in technical theater and design from Emerson College in Boston, whose alumni include Jay Leno, Henry Winkler, Andy Kaufman, I believe Carol Burnett, among others. And one of my classmates was for a number of years the number one clown with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. So my work in entertainment allowed me an interesting vantage point in terms of the opportunity to work with several A-list stars, certainly B-list stars. I did live theater, film, television, and as I was saying in our pre-talk, um, a slew of prototype toy commercials. So I got to play with toys long before children ever saw them, which was a lot of fun. Although I did have some cut fingers from putting together some of the more sharp, less refined ones until they'd actually gotten the forms and molding done. That being said, um, so over the years, my focus in entertainment was always we were set decorators and props people, and we were always in the background making the magic. And I enjoyed it, and I learned and the skill that I've taken from that to what I'm doing now is in that world, you always have an opening day. You've always got a film day. And so planning backwards, what do I need to do today to be in a position to fulfill my obligation on that specific date? So I have this backwards planning skill. And then as it happened in my second marriage, my wife at the time suggested that I get a real estate license. So I got into real estate. I did luxury homes and various things on the residential side. And through my connections in the high-end homes, I ended up shifting over into commercial real estate and investment properties, predominantly income generating properties, similar to what Edible Home Gardens is offering its investors. And that then involved, and you got a little example of this when we were talking earlier, that then involved a different part of my brain, which is very analytical, and the ability to run with numbers and see different relationships that other people may or may not see. And I became very good at analyzing income generating properties, particularly hotels and multifamily, and being able to come up with valuations based on the income and then the current market trends, whatever they happen to be. And different from the residential market, there's no emotion in commercial real estate. But what came about in both of them was an exposure to a lot of very greedy, selfish people. And that chafed against my background. I grew up in a university community. My father was a prominent professor of law, very socially oriented in doing good things for the community. And so around the time that COVID hit, I was also diagnosed with cancer and went through my cancer treatment at that specific time, which made the travel required by both of my jobs um, more difficult and virtually impossible. So I ended up being forced to retire, which is fine. And I sort of searched around looking for what can I do. And I've always been very much involved in volunteer work. I volunteered. I don't know if you saw my dog a moment ago. I volunteered with the city on the off-leash dog parks. I volunteered in hospitals. I volunteered in political campaigns, supporting all sides of the spectrum. I wasn't politically, I'm going to be on this side or that side. A friend of mine wanted to run for office. Whether I agreed with their politics or not, I would work with them. Um, and so I have that natural volunteer spirit. And over my course of time in my social media contacts, um, the first was a lawyer in Serbia during the period of time when Milosevic was still running the country into the ground and NATO had decided to bomb Serbia. So this young man who was a young law student was experiencing that as part of his adulthood. And then, as it happened over time, I made friends with an agriculturalist in Uganda who operates something called the Kayonza Eco Farm Initiative in southwestern Uganda. And the three of us just got into the idea of creating an information network that has now morphed over a 10-year period to an actual 501c3 registered in Delaware, where I'm now the founder and CEO. Peter in Uganda is one of my board members. Voja is too busy dealing with issues in Serbia at the present to be involved, but he's one of my trustees. And we are focused, and this I think is what is of interest to you, Yvonne, and I think to your viewers. We're focused on learning, sharing, and teaching sustainable agriculture to those who farm by hand. So we're not doing famine, we're not doing refugees, we're not doing what I would call poverty porn, the little children with distended bellies and flies on their face. That's not what we're about. We're about the working people who are physically working the land and just need a hand up. Nothing more complicated than just a hand up, a little assistance on increasing crop yields, a little assistance on regenerating the soil so that in countries like Uganda where colonialism was prevalent for 200 years, the agricultural sustainability of the soil has been reduced to below 60%. So the efforts to revitalize the soil with compost with proper organic materials. One of my passions, which I'll talk about for a minute later, is earthworms. And because they're little engineers, and I have a whole plan for it. You'll become very aware as you get to know me that I have this very expansive, nonlinear mind. It goes every different direction. I'm a pedantic's worst nightmare. There's no question about it. So what's happened is we've evolved from three people to about 100 people are now invited to participate in our general meetings, 30 of which show up on a regular basis. So we're about 10 times the size we were 2 years ago. And it's all based on people's desire to give. And the whole premise of what we're doing is we're doing this. We're not doing it for money. Obviously we have to raise donations, but the people who are involved are genuinely dedicated to helping their fellow man simply by we do this little bit on our side of the equation, and it has this impact on the other side. And we in the West become very complacent about what we have. And we can go to the faucet and get a fresh glass of water. We can go to the washroom and use a clean toilet. We can cook in a clean kitchen. We can flip lights on and off in the winter. Certainly in my part of the world where we have darkness for a good portion of the year, we have lights on. I've got my neighbors with Christmas lights on right now, and and we take it all for granted. And then there are places in the world, which is what I'm experiencing as we do this, that they have none of it. They don't have the water, they don't have the power, they don't have the kitchen. They don't
Right.
have in many of the situations we're dealing with, and this is not to degrade the people that are there. They're hardworking people doing the best they can. But the schools and the orphanages and the social structure, in many cases, they're cooking meals for numerous people on the ground, basically using the ground, putting a plank of wood or a banana leaf down on the ground and preparing food, and then a fire right next to it on the ground. So among other things, one of the things we're looking at is providing kitchens in some of these locations. Nothing elaborate, just four walls, a roof, some ventilation, a counter, a source of potable water, and two raised fire beds, so they can prepare food on the counter, and the counter can be kept clean, and they can stand. They don't have to be slouched down on the ground. So we have three areas of primary focus: food security and sustainability. Then we have infrastructure, I'll call it, which is basically providing solar power and eventually internet connectivity to remote locations, primarily focused on schools and orphanages or churches, not for the religious aspect, but because they're areas with assembly space. And then other organizations can come in and make use of the available internet to exchange information. Your organization, for example, and our organization doing a mutual class or something. And then the third area is water management, but it's starting with just providing something as simple as a gravity-based potable water filter,
Right.
so that, this very simple filter that can plug into a 5-gallon pail can filter 150 gallons in 24 hours, and that's sufficient potable water for 300 people. And there are other more advanced and expensive systems that we can get into as we can afford to. But we have this one that is available that packs in a suitcase. My COO can take 5 or 10 or 20 and not be over baggaged in terms of weight. Um, and then another one of my donors and I are working on a project to create a transportation system that would filter 35 liters of water that could then run through a second filtration system. So places where you have to transport the water, we can do that. But the long-term objective is to get enough gravitas as an organization that we have relationships with the local government or the provincial or federal government in those settings, and can do projects where we can build reservoirs for irrigation or food or whatever. So basically, those three areas, I would refer to them as footings
Mhm.
as opposed to foundational.
Mhm.
And the principle being that any one of those footings, other organizations can come in on top. So as I was explaining to you in our pre-meeting, um, we exist in the ether. We have no office building, we have no equipment, we have no trucks. Everything we do is driven by the willingness to volunteer
Mhm.
and the willingness to give. And the giving part of it is the reward one gets for doing something like this that has an impact like this.
Right.
And it's the number of people I've talked to about this, particularly through our connections with other networking organizations. I think people are so surprised because it's a relatively simple thing to do. We're not trying to change the world. I'm not gonna. We're not gonna go in and solve the famine problem in Africa. We're not gonna solve the conflicts. We're not gonna solve the refugee situation. But we are going to be able to help hundreds, perhaps thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of families and people um, get that hand up to get to the next rung of the social ladder. And our expectation of the people we're working with is that they take ownership of whatever largesse we provide. So we want to be the capital investment and the guidance, but we don't want to tell people how to do this. They have to tell us what their community needs, and they have, in our view, they have to create the co-ops to make it successful. So one example is we want to give 6,000 chickens to 300 families. It's a very expensive program because it costs about $1,000 per farm or family. So that's a $300,000 project
Mhm.
right off before we do anything. And we'll do it at whatever pace and scale it ends up being. But if we're successful at achieving that, what happens is these families then have the nutrition they need to be able to let the children work not work at the farm, but to go to school. The children then get the education they need and the nutrition they need. And the families, net of whatever they're eating, at the end of it, if we manage to distribute this to 300 farms, are producing 75,000 farm fresh eggs a month for market. So they not only feed themselves, but they actually have a financial resource that has been generated. And all we want for them to do is take ownership and be responsible enough to make it work. And we'll provide veterinary care and feed to get things started. But in the long run, we want the community to take that, and then we'll take that to the next community. Similarly, what we're doing with solar power is we've been granted the means to provide solar power and internet connectivity to 5 communities, 4 of which are in Uganda, one's in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm hoping that we generate enough interest so that we can continue that program, and I can do a location in Zimbabwe, I can do a location in the Philippines where the people live right next to Manila, but they have absolutely no power or internet, and they have to walk 2 hours in across rivers and up hills to get to their location. And there's 3,000 people living there raising lemons for the market, but they have nothing. They're in effect indigenous by that stretch of the word. And you don't have to look anywhere in the world to pick up a leaf or a piece of trash and see a problem that you can assist and solve. And so where my interest in what you're doing with the edible home garden concept is, we'll go to the earthworms. I want to, with the schools we provide the solar power to, I want to use them as commercial earthworm farms. So the kids get the experience of raising and caring for the earthworms. And if I have 5 cubic foot bins with a pound of African night crawlers each, within a year, the 300 worms that make up a pound in each bin is anywhere between 10 and 25,000 worms. So, 83 pounds or whatever of worms. And this is how weird my mind is. The current global value per pound of African night crawlers, because of fishermen in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
uh, is $40 a pound. Well, if I find the appropriate corporate sponsor or faith-based sponsor or individual who wishes to participate in that program, we then buy the earthworms from the school. The school gets the financial benefit of that $40 per pound, however many pounds it is, 83 pounds or whatever, $16,000 perhaps. And they get a ton to 2 tons of vermicompost that they can use on their own fields, or we can package and distribute to the community as a largesse or as a fee-based, more money generating type of product. And I get 83 pounds of earthworms, or 125,000 earthworms, that I then can either use for open air composting, which is part of the regeneration of soil, or it takes 500,000 earthworms to regenerate an acre of land. 125,000 earthworms will do that in a year or two because they colonize and expand, and they're like rabbits. Or the one that is closest to my heart is the particular species of worm that I've chosen burrows to about 15 feet, which means that on a hillside where they have a landslide issue, these creatures create avenues for water and roots to penetrate and dissipate. So 12 inches of rain on a sloped surface would normally take the better part of a number of hours and potentially cause a landslide. This pretty much gets the water down below the slip plane and provides enough moisture to increase the tensile strength of the surrounding roots and earthworms and whatever, so trees and grasses, and stabilizes the bank. So in the far eastern Uganda, where we get our Arakaba coffee that we prefer in the West, and it's a big business. They had a landslide, I think, in 2014, killed 1,000 or more people, wiped out, entire communities, and it displaced about 25,000 people. So this kind of simple solution, it'll take a year to 10 years to accomplish, but it may stabilize the landslide risk sufficiently to make sure that terraced and contoured farmland remains intact in the rainy season. So that's a close to my heart thing because the impact of a creature that's this big
Yeah.
is is enormous. And so it's kind of fun. I mean, it drives my team nuts when I go start talking about earthworms because they want to give chickens and eggs and whatever.
I love
But
earthworms. I love the whole concept, Peter, because we're big on earthworms. It does a whole lot of for the permaculture for the earthworms.
right,
And regarding your land, like you were talking about with the land, I mean,
mhm,
there's certain crops that I would like to talk with you offline. Maybe about how you can use certain herbs and certain types of products that actually grow, but will help protect that land as the worms do their thing. The landscape that
right,
you choose, and this is like what's perfect about that kind of landscape is that it rejuvenates itself. You can't kill it. They
right,
call it,
right,
they call it obnoxious weeds, but those weeds have a purpose. you know.
right. And we're looking at doing that on acres as well. We my principal donor and I have had the conversation of crop rotation using flax and other
Yeah.
crops to eventually,
Mhm.
because we'll use the detritus of the flax, but the flax also generates linseed oil and linen. So there's
Mhm.
commercial value to that. And then the other crops that we can put in uh, and what's interesting about Uganda is they have two planting seasons. So what would normally take four years in the United States with a single planting season,
Mhm.
we can accomplish in 2 years if we're conscientious about what we're doing. And keeping in mind, these are all people who farm by hand. They are using tools that were designed thousands of years ago. And we're not changing that. We don't want to change that. We don't want to bring in combines and tractors because they break down and nobody knows how to fix
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
Right. So, we are, in principle, we are tiny drops of rain moistening a bunch of soil so that other collective groups with people who want to provide books or people who want to provide shoes and clothing or people who want to provide whatever structure they choose to provide have a footing to work from. We just want to give them a level of foundational elements that they have a healthy population that has some sanitary circumstances, are being fed, are able to store the food that they're generating, because that's another problem. They have a bumper crop, and half of it rots in storage.
Yeah.
And they still end up in a desperate food situation. And potentially, if we get enough farms and families involved, because of our mutual business connections that you and I have in the Western world,
Mhm.
finding proper markets for the goods,
Oh,
so that
yeah,
if they can't
absolutely.
keep the crops, they can get the money to be able to purchase what they need in the future. Um, and
Agreed.
and
Totally.
and that's basically, I mean, you and I are doing the same thing in different places. You're doing it for the displaced in the United States, and I really like what you're doing as a program. I think Edible Home Gardens Resorts is a wonderful concept in its generosity, in its function, in the idea that people can feed themselves the basics. They still need to do whatever else, but it's genuinely affordable housing if they already have the means of a trailer or an RV to live in.
Mhm.
And it's a nice location from the one you described to me. That's a lovely scenario of being able to share what is effectively a farm RV park.
And the best part about what you do and what we do is community. It's all about
Yeah,
community. I am
absolutely.
so strong in community. And people forget the United States was built on community.
Yeah,
Think
absolutely.
about it. That's what we were built on. If it wouldn't have been for community and agriculture, we wouldn't have what we have in this
No,
country.
no.
So we
And
became strong because of agriculture and because of community.
and I think the other element about what we're doing collectively, you and I both, is we're not leaning on the
Yeah.
chemistry industry. We're using the knowledge of that. We need
Yeah.
nitrogen. How do we get nitrogen? We need the various phosphorus and all these things that come out of the soil.
Mhm.
But, there are plants, and what's wonderful right now, and I think what has brought what I'm doing to the forefront right now, in addition to Donald Trump stepping away from providing global aid, which was a political choice that one day will be reversed. But at the present, what happened is that that connected with the fact that you have this. You and I are having a conversation we couldn't have 10 years ago.
That's
We
right.
couldn't do this. We couldn't do this 10 years ago. I have conversations every Saturday with people in Africa. We were talking about time differences. I have to, I was asked earlier today, what are my money making hours? And my money making hours, if you want to call it that, are in the morning when I can talk to two-thirds of the world
Mhm.
within their business day or shortly thereafter. Um, and every you and I are in different time zones. I think in global time,
Yep.
right? That's part of it. But the other element of it is that we're doing things that are organic, not because I'm a tree hugger or any of that, but and perhaps I am, but that's not my focus. I mean, I'll go to Safeway or I'll go to the grocery store and I'll buy cereal made by General Mills or whoever, right? I'm no different than anybody else in the Western world. But what what I will know is if I get a pound of coffee shipped to me from Uganda, it's
Mhm.
been grown organically. It
Yeah.
has not, it hasn't been sprayed with chemicals that
Mhm.
are killing off the natural
Mhm.
flora and fauna. It has grown organically and safely within that context. It's been if you will, handcrafted. I mean, they hand pick this stuff. And until you actually see what a ripe coffee bean looks like, you have no idea what that little brown thing that you put in the grinder actually looks like when it comes off the tree. It's a little cherry, and it's quite something. And there's a whole process that they go through. And Uganda, as it happens, provides in the eastern part of Uganda, they provide what we prefer in the West, which is the Arabica coffee, excuse my mispronunciation. And then in the western part, it's the Robusta, which is very popular in Asia. So
Mhm.
your Vietnamese coffees and your Thai coffees tend to be the thicker, darker species and breed.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm really excited that we'll be able to promote your products on our resorts. I mean, think about that. It's a
Yeah,
built-in community of how we can help each other and
absolutely.
sell your products, promote them as well. I think it's going to be awesome, and I'm sure we'll get a good price.
Yeah, you will. You will. No, and I think the other aspect of that is, it's not so much the products as the technology at this point.
Mhm.
If we discover the means, and that's what happens, right? I mean, as I do this, I get introduced to people and opportunities, and you come across. I mean, I've come across a huge organic fertilizing company. Um, I've come across people with hydroponics. Now, my potential mission is I don't want to change the traditions. But at
Mhm.
the same time, if I can provide a community with fresh lettuce hydroponically, then
Mhm.
the question becomes if we can afford to do that, why not?
Mhm.
Right? Why would you not provide people the necessary nutrition to because if you lift their nutritional values, you lift their health circumstances. Ultimately, you lift some of the stresses that cause domestic violence, and you just everything is a positive if you look at it as a as a no cost to the recipient benefit, right? I'm not coming in and saying, listen, I want you to, and I'm not slagging the faith community, but we're not coming in and trying to get you to understand the Bible that I might understand it. I'm not trying to get you to follow my political beliefs. I'm
Right.
simply, I'm simply looking, most of the time, I'm looking at children and going, okay, my long-term goal is to make mom and pop stable so that these children in, perhaps my lifetime, perhaps not, but these children have a fair and stable equal footing to enter the workforce or enter further education. So if I can provide opportunities through AI and internet connectivity and all of those things for children in a school, and they can come to the school because mom and pop are no longer stressed about feeding the family, then there's a whole generation 10 years out, 15 years out, that benefit from our efforts. And ideally, somebody will carry on what we're doing.
I think
And
it's fantastic. Peter, we're coming up on a hard break, and
yeah,
I'm really excited to get the word out, and I want people to get to know you on a more intimate level when it comes to your Kayonza.
Kayonza. It's a
I'm such
small,
a butcher with names, isn't it
it's
terrible?
okay. Well, yeah, but listen, try mine. I'm trying to pronounce all those names with W's and H's together.
Yeah, yeah,
And KWH and things like that.
yeah.
So, so for your viewers, if they are interested in finding out more, and this isn't a pitch just for donations. I'm looking for people that have a desire to volunteer. I'm looking for people who have ideas, as well as obviously we are looking for money and donations. But so the website is Kayonza, KAYONZ or Z if you're in Canada, .org. Um, my email, if people want to reach out to me, I will give you my Gmail account for that. And it's peter.kalven, Kalv as in Victor, E as in eat, N as in Nancy, at gmail.com. And, you know, there are means to connect with us on the website. There are means to connect with me directly. Certainly, I'm on Alignable, as you know. I'm on LinkedIn, not as much. I exist on Facebook, but I don't, again, after Cambridge Analytica, I went off to TikTok, so I exist on TikTok. But we'll find which social media is the best to promote what we're doing. And one of the things that I would like to do, for two things I want to do before we close here. Again, I want to promote the fact that what you're doing with the edible home garden resorts is fundamentally important, is helping people at they're not the bottom of the pile, but they are the people that need they need the most generous, but not expensive, but generous opportunity to prove themselves. Give them the hand up that they need. And I applaud you for creating that opportunity because you're providing space for them to live at half, even a quarter of what they would pay for an apartment with no
Exactly.
means to raise food.
I know, and
And
it is really fantastic. I mean, eighth of an acre, fourth of an acre, anywhere from $350 to $500 per lease, tenth of an acre, fourth of an acre, and eighth of an acre. And that is a great opportunity for someone to get started and have a place to go, especially right now where the tensions are high because people are, with the new law being made where people can, have their vehicles impounded and now they're completely homeless. So
right.
we're making a situation worse, going from.
And you're providing them a secure place. And I think for your listeners to understand, because I'll use my little real estate mind here, when you say a quarter of an acre, that's 10,000 square feet.
Yeah,
And we were discussing this before. Most RVs or double wide trailers are less than they're 800 to 1,200 square feet. Most bungalows in most cities are 1,200 square feet. So you still have and most city lots, even big ones, are generally 4,000 square feet. So you have twice the space that
right.
you would have in a city lot to develop in. And as you've explained to me, people are using that for their organic gardens, for their own food, for food to resell, and
Mhm.
materials and supplies. And I mean, again, we were talking earlier about flax and hemp. I mean,
Yeah,
those are actual products that can be produced and legally without any issues, and they provide an alternate income.
exactly.
And grant and I have the advantage in Central Africa because of the climate. It's in the equator. It's got seasonal monsoons, so there's two growing seasons. So there's we that and that there's two growing seasons, and yet this part of the world was colonized to the point, and I don't want to blame the geopolitics of colonization, but they were raped, if you will, of their resources and deprived of the means. I mean, considering what plantations and whatever were able to do and the equipment they were able to bring in to do it, it's surprising to me that 51% of the world's population basically, basically falls into the category of farming by hand.
Yep. I'll tell you, I definitely want to talk to you about Miracle Plant in Africa. That's one
Yep.
thing that I want to buy if you guys can market that, because that is a product that, it sweetens food naturally. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but if you look it up, Miracle Plant, and it's a lot of money, and it's well grown in Africa.
Okay, we'll look into it because again, I have an obligation to in my function to do nutrition, silage, and then commercial crops. But to find the balance where we can do that, because a lot of the farms there are only a few acres. I mean, some of your residents will have more land than the farmers we're dealing with. As
Exactly. And time is the essence right now, but we have to cut this short because we're gonna run out of time here. And you had an
Yep.
appointment to follow up
Yeah,
with.
I've got to go to something else. So thank you very much, Yvonne. Thank you for again, when we first met, I was impressed with what you're doing. As I hear more of it, and we talked a little bit about the financials from an investment perspective and my background in commercial real estate, I see it as a very solid potential investment for someone because the
Mhm.
way you described it is you can fractionalize it enough so that each individual investor to a degree is secure.
Yep.
And everybody involved, the leasee, the lessor, everybody ends up
Yeah.
secure, the mortgage, the mortgagee. And that, you don't find that with any frequency in the commercial market. So as I said, I'm going to introduce it to a couple of my former clients and see if they wouldn't be interested in supporting your efforts. Because I have to applaud you for what you're doing. I think
Thank you
it's
so
wonderful.
much. And that likewise for you too. And I did attend one of his meetings. I think I welcome everybody to go to his meetings. His information will be in the show notes. So you
Yep.
definitely have to contact Peter and
Yep.
make sure that if there's any questions, he'll answer them for you. You can tell he's so thorough on everything. He knows his stuff inside and out, and he is phenomenal with numbers. Oh my God.
Well, I don't know
So,
about that.
so Peter, it's been such a pleasure. I hope we can have you back and follow up and have a series maybe about what you're doing. And
Bob, I look forward to that because on what is it, the 7th, we're doing a webinar for half an hour before our Saturday meeting, just highlighting what we're doing in one location, interviewing the recipients, the location. Our COO is going to be in Uganda at the time. And it's an orphanage where we are feeding the children, some 70 children. We've made a commitment to feed them for the entire year. We just built them a new kitchen. We're involved and we're going to be providing solar power there, and they have a means of potable water, but we're going to be enhancing that.
well,
Um,
I'm
so
looking forward to introducing you to our military guy who's creating a patent. He's got a patent for solar. So it's going to be an amazing thing, but really,
I think, yeah,
we got to go.
yeah,
Running out of time. But Peter, thank you. I'm grateful that you were here on the show, and thank you so
uh,
much. And I just wish you all the best.
well, thank you very much for having me. Have a good evening, and to your viewers, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peter. Bye now.
Bye bye.